All right, so the third video that we're going to do is we're going to talk about what was called the Green Revolution, and there actually were a couple of them, and how that affected food production. And so the Green Revolution was really trying to get more food uh, developed under less land use, I guess would probably be the best way. So this is where monocultures really came about. Um, Unfortunately, again, they use large amounts of water, fertilizer, pesticides, and multi-cropping is not only growing a crop but trying to grow the same crop 2 or 3 times. All works out wonders and gets you tons of food. The Green Revolution was kind of the 1950s to 1970s. And then the second one started just before in 1967 on. And the first Green Revolution was really in kind of the well developed countries, especially the United States, where we started growing these types of crops like corn and wheat and all those things, right? Rice, not quite as much, but on these large plantations. The second Green Revolution, starting just before the 70s, this was looking at rice and wheat varieties in less developed countries. So it was a second revolution in some of the lesser developed countries. And what we mean by that is not just some of the really small ones. At that point, it was actually things like China, although China has kind of changed where their development is since then. So between 1950 and 2015, world grain production has increased over 300,000 per capita, and it's still growing. It's still doing, going up typically. Again, China, India, and the United States produce almost half of the world's grain, and they have most of the people, which kind of makes sense. And then people consume about half the world grain, and then the rest of that actually is put into feed to feed animals, for which then we again eat, and we're talking chicken and pork and beef. All right, do not want to just kind of slide over, so we're going to talk about GMOs. And GMOs are genetically modified organisms. Could be plants, could be animals. The first gene revolution was really kind of, wasn't laboratory based per se. It was crossbreeding. Farmers have done this forever. If you want a lot of milk, you take your best cow and you take your best bull and you breed them, and hopefully they're young, produce a lot of milk, and you do this selective breeding that we've always done. So that has gotten us our corn and tomatoes of today. The second one is really the GMOs, and that's where we've gone in and done gene splicing, and we go in and we alter. And it turns out, according to the USDA, about 80% of all food products on the US supermarket shelves contain some form of GMO. And that's quite a bit. The concerns, we do not know long-term effects. In theory, there shouldn't be any, but we really don't know that, and you guys are guinea pigs for that, so you're all gonna die. Anyway, hate to tell you. Okay, probably never heard that before, but anyway. So the problem is now that we've been doing this for quite a while, if we decide something is dangerous, how do we pull it back? It's going to be very, very difficult to do. It's already in the environment. It's probably almost impossible to recall. And then I think my biggest fears is the genes can now jump into wild populations of plants, which can cause all kinds of problems, acting as weeds or take over. And so, we really don't know, and we're kind of jumping into this, like we often do, without any real controls out there. I'm trying to figure out what is best. And 64 countries now require food labels, and in the U.S. in 2016, we did pass a law, and it's the barcode. And so here again is, people are fighting for labeling, and they're like, okay, we'll label, but we don't want to make anything easy. So there's a barcode, and the chances are that you're more likely to read something than you are to get out your phone and scan And so this is just another way to make it harder for you to get information that you may want or need. All right, let's talk about meat consumption a little bit. And again, we want you to watch the movies. But between 1950 and 2016, meat and animal products such as eggs, milk, um, increased sixfold. And so, you know, again, a lot heavier meat consumption, especially in the U.S. According to the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, is going to double probably by 2050, and we're starting to see that in other countries now, where they are more meat based than they were before. Half of the world's meat that should be comes from rangelands, and the other half is actually in these what's called CAFOs. And those are what you're seeing here, you know, kind of the common name for that are feedlots, where we're highly industrialized, force feeding kinds of production. So the one up on the top is actually cattle. And actually this encourages them not to move around a lot, which actually gives meat better marbling, more fat. And then on the bottom we have chickens, and you know, they're in buildings, very little light, and so the idea is to just get as much meat as you possibly can, and do it as cheap as you can. But what you got to realize in both of those situations is they're pretty much standing in their own fecal matter, which is why they're hit up with antibiotics so heavily, which then jacks with our immune responses. So not a great system. It's a great system if you want lots of meat, not necessarily a great system for the animal's welfare and for human health. And then on the bottom right is fish and shellfish. This would be agriculture, where again they're doing productions, and that's increased ninefold. So it could be fish, could be things like shrimp, mussels, things like that. But anyway, so we're just seeing this huge explosion in meat consumption. So animal feedlots and CAFOs, you know, we have trade-offs, and also with the agriculture. So there's advantages and disadvantages. And again, the charts, I'm not going to go over really, have you look at them on your own, pretty simple, but I wanted a place for you to see them simply. All right, so what are the environmental effects of industrialized food production? We have all kinds: soil erosion, desertification, irrigation, water shortages, air, water pollution, climate change, loss of biodiversity. I mean, just name them. There's a bunch of them. On the right-hand side, you can see some of the things that are having such a big impact. Large amounts of energy are needed to grow and store the food, and then it's getting it where it needs to be, and then it's the processing, like cooking, refrigeration. We use 10 units of fossil fuel energy to produce 1 unit of food in the United States. That's just kind of a general round number. Fishing fleets use 12.5 for seafood, and our food industry is right now highly dependent on the fossil fuel industry, and one goes, the other one's going to be hurt. So we need to really kind of keep that in mind as we go forward. And then not only that, but we also have some environmental unsustainable things happening. Remove 70% of fresh water from surface areas for for irrigation. Uses 38% of the world's ice-free land. 25% of greenhouse gases are coming from our farming techniques, and 60% of all water pollution. So heavy impact on the environment. So with that in mind, what we want to do is give you another Vogel principle. Each year, the total area for resource production decreases while human populations and their consumption rates increase. We are in a foot race that we cannot win. This basically means that we've got areas to produce food going down while human populations consumption is going up. Like I said earlier, today we can feed everybody on the planet. We choose not to. I'm guessing that question, that statement will be false in the future. and we're heading the other direction. It'll be a point where we can't physically feed everybody on the planet. You're all going to die.